Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the romances that I would recommend to you if you are a brand new reader to romance. I will admit, I was inspired to film this video by this comment that was left on my video essay on the state of romance right now. From what I could tell, this reader is not a huge romance reader. They might have enjoyed romance in the past, but they were asking after some of the recommendations that I have, and I spent about an hour compiling all of my favorites together that I felt like would be great for them to try and would appeal to them based on some kind of specific criteria that I do feel like a lot of people are interested in. So I wanted to kind of like share those recommendations and thank this person for leaving this comment and indulging me in my love of talking about books. I love romance. It's my favorite genre. If you've been around for any length of time, you probably know that I read a ton of romance. I do also read like fantasy, but I read pretty much every subgenre of romance. It's my favorite. It's my favorite book to read, movie to watch, TV show to watch. Like, I love. We're going to talk about some of the ones that I recommend, and I've broken them down into category. So if you're interested in a specific category, I have a couple of recommendations for you. So first up, I'm going to talk about some really popular romances that I still think hold up, and also that I would really recommend. We all know that books get popular and they're not necessarily the most accessible and they're not always the best. I'm looking at you, Icebreaker. Two very popular romances that I genuinely think are really good places to begin and hold up are The Kiss Quotient. This is a fake dating sort of romance. It follows a woman who is autistic and she is looking for sex education, basically, and she has had some like not great sexual encounters, and so she hires the hero to teach her about sex, and they fall in love along the way. Something that I value and love in romance in particular is the relatability factor. I love feeling like on some level I can relate to the character, I can understand where they're coming from, and as an autistic person myself, I love seeing autistic people fall in love. I love them being central to the story, and I think Stella was an amazing main character. This is swoony, it's funny, it's endearing, and if you're not autistic, or you're not this brand of autism, because remember, one autistic person is just one autistic person, then I think you'll really enjoy this novel in this fresh perspective on romance. Kind of along the same lines, we have the extremely popular third novel in the Brown Sisters trilogy by Talia Hibbert, Act Your Age, Eve Brown. So everybody knows about this. I think even if you're not on the romance side of the internet, then you have heard about this. It surely made its rounds, and I have read every single book in this series, and this is for sure my favorite. This follows Eve Brown, who is the youngest Brown sister, and she is very flighty. Her parents and her get into an argument in the beginning of the novel, and she runs off and stumbles upon the hero's bed and breakfast situation, and he is hiring. They go through the interview process on a whim, and it doesn't go very well. As she's leaving, she runs over the hero with her car, and some shenanigans ensue. Again, we have two autistic characters this time. We have Jacob, who is the hero. He was diagnosed at a young age, as is pretty common for men. And then we have Eve, who has never even considered that she might be autistic, and she's kind of exploring her identity, along with working through this slow burn tension between her and Jacob and kind of discovering herself. I adored this. I was giggling and kicking my feet the entire time. The little ways that they each showed up for each other, especially Jacob to Eve, were gorgeous. I loved Eve's exploration into her autism and who she is as a person. It was intensely relatable, and I loved seeing myself in a romance. I loved people talking about experiences that I have never read about. I've never read people in romance talk about things that I've experienced in that way, and like identity and growing up and how you show up in relationships. This was just intensely relatable for me, and it was one of the best romances that I've ever read. Might be a little bit biased. You might read it and think it's just like, it's okay. But as an autistic person, seeing myself in a romance is beautiful. And I do want to read The Kiss Quotient again because I read it prior to my diagnosis, and I would be so interested to see how it hits the second time around. And then my last kind of fun, swoony contemporary romance recommendation is actually an indie romance, and it is a sports romance. And the hero is a football player on the football team, and the heroine is working for the football team. It's called Blindside. I've read a couple of other romances from this author, and this is definitely my favorite. If you are a fan of really obsessive and attentive heroes, you'll really love the hero in this one. Their relationship is very slow burn, and we kind of have like the nerdy kind of quiet woman versus like the football player, but he's not the typical playboy, gross, like alpha football player. He's very gentle and very sweet, and he's completely gone for the heroine, which is just my favorite type. So then if you're looking for something a little bit more emotional, more impactful, maybe dealing with some of the harder hitting aspects of a romance, I would recommend the Grip trilogy, or really anything by Kennedy Ryan. I think she is an incredible author. She knows how to write a romance dealing with really heavy topics in such a beautiful way, while without losing the perspective of the characters. The Grip trilogy itself is a trilogy following the same characters. This is basically about a woman who works for her brother's record company, and she represents the hero. He is an artist, and he's always wanted to be an artist. He's always kind of had a thing for her, but they have a chance encounter, and she finds out that he's already dating someone after they've had this like tension-filled moment. So the subsequent books are about them falling in love, working through hardships. You get in the last one dealing with some like marital issues. This series is incredible. The third one, I genuinely cried from beginning to end. The whole trilogy taps into such vulnerability in the characters. You can tell that these characters genuinely want to love and understand each other. They are meeting each other where they're at, and they have nothing but beautiful and good and loving intentions with each other. It's so emotional. It's so beautiful. It's definitely heavy. It's definitely dealing with a lot of trauma. These characters are very different from each other, but like I said, they are trying to work together for this love that they feel for each other, and it's gorgeous. Check your trigger warnings before you go in, but I would fully recommend. So let's talk about some historical romances that I think you should check out if you're new. First, we have Devil in Spring. This is quite far into this series, but they can be read as companion novels, so you don't necessarily have to read the first one first, etc., etc. Elisa Kleypas is definitely one of my favorite historical romance authors. Her writing is sweeping and beautiful and swoony while being quiet, and all of her characters feel incredibly dynamic. Pandora, in this one in particular, fits a different role than we tend to see in Lisa Kleypas's novels. She is delightfully odd and quirky, and she's very different from the other women around her. She has no interest in getting married and having children, and she has no interest in fitting the mold that is expected of women. And the hero is from a family friend's family, and he's completely in love with her. He's obsessed with her. He thinks she's brilliant. And there's a ton of conversations about agency in this, and the way that Sebastian treats Pandora is amazing. It's beautiful. It is definitely more modern of a historical, and there is definitely more modern ideals. So if you're someone that wants to read historical fiction that is 100% accurate to time, then this isn't going to be for you, but I think this is an amazing place to start in Lisa Kleypas's backlist and with historical romance in general. Another historical romance pick would be The Companion by E.E. Odeman. This is a fairly short one. It's a good place to start. if you're trying to get into historicals. I think it's around 200 pages, and it follows 3 trans characters out in a cottage in the middle of the woods, falling in love and working out their dynamic. If I recall correctly, all of them are together. It's not like one leg is more prominent than the other. It's not like a love triangle situation. It's a true polyamorous relationship. There are some spicy scenes. It's pretty low stakes, but there is still some conflict, and it's gorgeously written. The romances are so soft and sweet, and the way that they understand each other and like show up for each other is just brilliant. And then the last historical romance that I have to recommend is an oldie but a goodie, arguably one of the best historical romances of all time, and that is Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. I have read an extensive amount of Beverly Jenkins novels. She is a legend in the subgenre for a reason, and I think this one is her best. It follows a guy who saves slaves on the Underground Railroad and a woman who was a slave who is now freed, and she takes care of the hero. The way that this man is so enraptured by her, the respect and the love that they have for each other, the little moments together are really beautiful. It's a heart-touching story, not only through the experiencing what the characters have been through, but their romance and them falling in love and the little quips and fights they have, and he really has to work hard to earn her heart, and he's like so happy to do so. It's a gorgeous romance. Of all of the 3 that I recommend, I would say pick this one up first if you want something that is just like deeply, heart-achingly romantic. And then my last 2 recommendations are for people that mainly read fantasy as their main genre. They maybe moved from YA fantasy that had a little bit of romance in it to epic fantasy, and you are wanting to dip your toes into like the romantasy genre. My first recommendation would definitely be House of Bane and Blood by Alexis Maynard. This is an indie fantasy romance. It's Peaky Blinders-esque. The hero and the heroine are from rival families in this city. Some people have magic and some people don't. This is like an arranged marriage situation. And in my opinion, this is like peak angst and tension between hero and heroine. Peak like slow burn. They really don't like each other, but they can't deny their attraction. And of course, like, there's the family drama. It has some amazing, like, Peaky Blinders moments and some fun world building, some fun magic. I think it's a great intro into romantasy. The romance is not too heavy. The fantasy isn't too complex. And it just has the hint of the world building that you would want. And then my last romantasy recommendation and recommendation in general is A Rivalry of Hearts. I have not shut up about this novel since I read it. It's completely changed my brain chemistry. This is like a historical fiction fantasy. It's funny, and it follows two authors on a book tour together. They're in the Fey Realms. The heroine is a romance author. She writes fantasy romances with Fey characters, and the hero is a poetry author. They're on this book tour together, and whoever wins gets a publishing deal. However, they make a bet with each other. By the end of the tour, whoever kisses the most people will win the publishing deal. The hero originally sets up the bet because he wants to have a little risque moment with the heroine, and it doesn't really work out. She's not picking up the flirting clues from him, and so he begrudgingly enters into this bet, and he's very into her. He spends the entire book like obsessing about her and watching everything that she does. He thinks that she's so brilliant. It's kind of like this rivalry situation because obviously they both want this position. They both want to win this publishing thing for their own reasons, but he knows that she has more passion and heart for it than she does, but he has his own reasons that he's like fighting for. And it's delightful. It's funny. I was like giggling and kicking my feet the whole time, and I adored it. So those are some recommendations for romances that I think you should check out if you are new to the romance genre. I would love to talk down below on things that you loved and picked up as your first romance book. All of my social medias are linked down below. Please consider subscribing if you are looking for more videos like this. Check out my backlist. I have such a varied video type. You can find really anything that you like there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.